Hey guys, welcome back! In today's video, I'm going to go through the types of stuffing that I use to stuff my dolls. So the first one is called Hobbyfill. It's probably called something else where you're living, where you're from, but in Australia it's called Hobbyfill and you can get it from Spotlight. And it is just a polyfill, and this one's a particularly soft polyfill, and it's not condensed together like some, harder, heavier ones for cushions and stuff. So this is pretty much the same stuff that you put in, that you find inside cushions and sleeping pillows and stuff like that. But it's mainly used to stuff teddy bears and art dolls like what I do. I primarily use this one in particular just because I've worked with it from day one, and I've tried a couple of different things and I found this one works quite well. And you can also make it as dense as you want, or as light as you want, as fluffy as you want, because it is quite airy, so it can condense down quite thick and heavy and become quite solid, or you can just leave it as pretty fluffy and it will just fill out if you want something that's soft bodied, or a bit more cuddly, or if you want something a bit harder you can also just shove it into where you want it to go, and it will become quite dense and solid. So this is my favorite thing to use because it's just quite cost effective. I can get a whole bag of, I think it was 2 kilos for, I think it was $19, and here in Australia everything's pretty expensive, so it might not seem cheap to you, but it is a pretty average price here. It also rolls on itself and it sort of sticks to each other, so if you have a different technique of creating your bodies for your dolls, it can roll on itself and you can just sort of then attach your fur once it's been rolled up. So couple of different techniques that you can try on that one. So you can probably find these at any local craft store. Just search for some polyfill, that's what it's called, and it should be around any hobby craft store. Moving on to the second one, and this is a little bit harder and it's a little bit more expensive than the Hobbyfill. So as you can see, when I tug it, it doesn't actually come apart, and this is called batting. So batting is used for things that you inside 2 pieces of fabric. If you want it to be a bit more plush, you put this inside certain fabrics. The beauty of this one is it is a little tougher than the polyfill that I used before, and it also sticks on itself. So when you roll it up, it's quite solid, but you can't really mold it into each other like you can the polyfill. So I've only used this a couple of times. I'm not the biggest fan of using these things, but it has its purpose. So it's a good second option if you can't find any polyfill and you have some batting laying around. And it's a little bit straw, plasticky feeling as well, so I don't quite like that feel to it, so that's why I tend to go for the polyfill instead of the batting. But again, it's good for if you have a different technique than what I do and you apply the fur after you've put the stuffing on. This is good for that particular technique just because it sticks on itself, so and it holds its shape quite well as well, whereas the polyfill sort of falls apart a bit easier than this one. So yeah, you can tug this one to all you like, and it's pretty hard to pull apart, but you can pull it apart as well if you really wanted to, so it's not too hard to do that either. And also, I have a lot of things that stick to this as well, so don't leave it around if you don't want things stuck to it, because it's like a magnet for crap. And again, you can find it at any local craft store around your area, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find. Moving on to the next one, and I don't really use these very often. I have tried when I first started, and I didn't really like the way it felt and just how it sat and everything, but it's called polyfill pellets, and they're sort of little silicone pellets, so you can see they have a mind of their own and they kind of move around, which I got kind of distracted playing with them moving around. But yeah, they feel like little silicone balls, and they sort of squishy as well, so when you put it in certain dolls and stuff, they sort of add a bit of weight to the doll, so they're probably better for bears and stuff like that you make, or reborn dolls, Not so much art dolls unless you want that weight in the doll itself, but then you have posability issues when things are too heavy. But the good thing with this as well is if you have like a top heavy, so say you have a deer or something and the head's really heavy because of the antlers, they've made the antlers out of Sculpey and it keeps toppling over. So you can put these particular things at the back of the doll and it will give some weight to the back end. So that way it will be more even when you're standing it and it won't fall over on its head. So that's also a good use to use these particular things. But I don't really use them at all. And they're a little bit expensive. So that's not really good if you're on a budget. So yeah, I wouldn't really recommend these, but if you like the feel of them, by all means go ahead. And you can find these mainly on eBay and any bear shops and stuff like that. So I haven't found them in the store anywhere in Australia before, but I'm sure you can find them somewhere. Moving on to the next one, and these are probably the most expensive ones you can get, and these are called glass beads, and I don't like using these. They're really hard to use and sort of keep together. So because they're so fine and they're kind of like sand, you have to put them in a stocking, I found, or any piece of fabric that you like. But I've put them in stockings before, and that's just a pain in itself as well. So you have to make sure that you pour it in the stocking and it doesn't get out. I've spilt the stuff everywhere. And that's a disaster in itself because it goes everywhere. So I'll just take a little bit out of the packet right now. You can kind of see what it looks like and you can kind of see how it resembles sand. And this stuff just gets under your nails and it's like almost impossible to get out of your nails unless you pick it out. But you can see how fine this is and how, microscopic and just difficult it is to work with. And you also have to be really careful not to get it in your eye because they're so fine, it will just wreak havoc in your eye. So before you go playing around with this stuff, make sure it's not under your fingernails and then you go and scratch your eye because it would be an absolute nightmare. So I'm going to put that back in the bag right now so I don't have that problem. But I've used this a couple of times, not a fan of it. And it's good to add weight and stuff like that, but it's just too difficult and too pricey to use these particular things. And again, they're mainly used for reborn and any weighted bear dolls and stuff like that. So not my cup of tea. And you can find it on eBay and other bear making shops online. I've never seen it in store here in Australia, so I might be in America, I'm not sure. But here in Australia, we just have nothing. So they're really difficult to find. And that is it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any requests, you can leave it in the comments down below. You can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!